Good morning, and good morning. Today is March 1st, pardon my voice, 2016. And I'm not quite sure why I'm doing this, but I believe it's important to have a journal. And if that journal is written or voice recorded or video recorded, then that's fine, as long as you get your thoughts out and down. So maybe that's why I'm doing it, because I'm prone to keeping a journal but not being consistent with it. So I've challenged myself to do this for the entire month of March, every day, for however long. It doesn't matter how long I'm doing it, but just so that I get these things down every day for the month of March. You're going to hear background noise. There's a lot going on, and I'll probably use different devices to record them, but I'm going to try to keep it to the tablet so that it's all in one place, because I can get to my blog from the tablet. I can get to my journal, my electronic journal, from the tablet. But and again, apologize for my voice, but trying to completely get over a cold, actually with the flu, and trying to get completely over it by resting as much as I can, but still doing the things that I need to do. So anyway, as I said, you're going to hear some background noise because there's a lot going on around me. I've got the TV on now. Sometimes I have the TV on, sometimes I turn it off. It just depends on what I've got going on and how much I need to think. But they're also working on the 2 minutes above us, so you may hear the sawing noises, or the feet in the boots going across the ceiling, or people yelling in the hallway, because where I'm sitting right now is right near the front door, and sometimes you can hear them when they're yelling in the hallway, and sometimes you might hear my dog. Right now he's resting, thank goodness. But you might hear our puppy. You might hear me talk to him or reprimand him or whatever, whatever the case. But I wanted to do this, I think, just to continue another version of my journal. And I say I think because I even though I challenge myself to do this every day for the entire month of March, I felt led to do it because there's been a lot going on, and I've not been consistent with writing down my thoughts in the last few months. I've written some things down, I've recorded some things verbally, I've recorded some things in a video, but overall I've not been consistent, and I need to be more consistent with getting my thoughts and my ideas out and speaking life into my life, even if that means that I have to speak some things that concern me, just to get them out of my actual physical body, and then speak life over those things that are concerning me. I started a while back with trying to voice record the beginnings of a new book, and I think I got 2 sessions in and wasn't able to take the time to do more. See, phone's ringing. Gotta pause. Okay. I had to take that call. Right now I'm doing home care through an agency because I was doing it for my grandmother, and so that's one of the things that's been going on in the last few months, so I'll lead up to that momentarily. But I was led to start another book, and I've started 1, 2, 3 books. I've got 4 in me, and the second book, or the first book, which is actually finished. I'm sorry, I'll go back. The first book is actually a book of my life. which is not finished. The second book is a book of testimonies, and that's going to be a two-part book. And that book is finished. I just need to get it to the publisher and do what I need to do to get it published. But like I said, that's a two-part book, and then book number 3 or 4, depending on how you want to look at it, is basically a book about living with Alzheimer's and what that means to the family members of a person with that diagnosis, Alzheimer's dementia diagnosis, because it's not easy. So I started doing the video recording on that right before I took on the care of my grandmother, and I think I got 2 video recordings done, voice recordings done, and just didn't have the opportunity to get any more done than that. So I am going to, a lot has happened since I started that, so I'm going to try to get as much out over this next, 30 days, over this next 31 days, 31 days in March, because there's been a lot that's happened since September, and I'm trying to get as much done as I can, or get as much out as I can. So there'll be things that seem like rambling, and there'll be things that actually make sense, but it really, I think, is just for me to get this out and then organize my thoughts after the fact. And some of these recordings will actually be post-worthy. So some of them I will actually post on YouTube. I've created a channel already. I've got a channel already. I just need to put some stuff up there, and I haven't. Mostly when I go to YouTube, I'm looking for inspirational things, videos, songs, and things of that nature. So, but I've actually got to start posting some stuff, and I know I do. I'm feeling led to do this, so I know I have to do it, because if I don't get it done, the Holy Spirit's going to keep pestering me until it's done. So let's try this one more time with getting these thoughts out from September up until now. It may take the entire 31 days. It may just take a couple of days. It may take a while. I don't know. But so September 12th of 2015 was the day a good friend of ours passed away. And when I say ours, I mean my husband and myself. We all went to high school together, and my husband's a part of a social club that is, it promotes brotherhood, strength and brotherhood. And this young man, of course, we're all around the same age because we all went to high school together. We all graduated within a year or 2 of one another. So we're all in the same age range. And this brother was diagnosed with cancer maybe 2 years, maybe a whole 2 years ago at this point. And he didn't initially want, I don't think he initially wanted everyone to know, but it got to a point where he had to let everyone know because he realized that there was strength in numbers when it comes to prayer. And I'm glad that he did tell us. I don't know every detail about it because he didn't give every detail about it, and his mom didn't give every detail about it. But what we do know is that when he was initially diagnosed, the doctors gave him, because it's a very rare form of stomach cancer, I think it's, out of 1 million people, you may have the diagnosis of 2 people. 2 people may have that diagnosis, I think is what the odds were. The statistics, I should say, not the odds. So he got that diagnosis, and they gave him basically, I think 3 months to live, 3 months, 6 months to live, something like that. It was less than a year, because this cancer is so rare, and because they don't have a great success rate with it. But he wanted to do whatever he had to do to survive. He wanted to live. That was his desire, to live as long as he possibly could. His desire was to beat this disease and be here for his family. He had a total of 6 children, and his youngest is 3 now. So anyway, his desire was to live, and he fought it as long as he was led to fight it, as long as God allowed him to fight it. And we were there for him up until that very last breath. And we had quite a few close calls. But when he got there, when he was there, when we knew that he was at the peak of it, everyone was there to be there with him for the next 2 days, for that 2 days that it took him to transition. Everyone that could be there. Not everyone handles grieving the same. Not everyone handles illness the same. So not all of the brothers could be there because they just couldn't handle it. And everyone was okay with that. Initially, there were some that were rather upset because they were like, man, this is our brother and this is what we need to do. But they got over it, I believe, because they realized that not everyone handles tragedy the same way. So September 12th, he made his transition, and it was a joyously sad moment, if you could say, if I could say that. And forgive my look. I mean, I'm a little disheveled at this point because I'm tired, and with all the rest I'm trying to get, I still don't feel need to take my vitamins too. With all the rest I'm trying to get, I still don't feel the energy that I need to feel in order to. I'm not feeling the energy, and I'm trying to build it back up. It's been a crazy, I don't know, what, 5 months, almost 6 months now. September, yeah, almost 6 months now. It's been a crazy almost 6 months. So anyway, to get back to it, so our friend passed away September 12th. His funeral was September 19th. And on the day of his funeral, my grandfather, who at the time was 82 years old, the day of this friend's funeral, my grandfather went into the hospital. And they had called to tell me, but I couldn't answer because I'm actually at the funeral, so I couldn't answer. They left me a message, and I did check it later and found out that he was going to the hospital. So I said, okay, fine, I'll give them a call when we're done. I wanted to get to the burial. I had to be there for my husband. I had to be there for my friends. I had to be there for his family. Great family that they are. And I had to be there. I had to be there for them. So, for myself as well. I mean, this was important to me. This was a great friend. And it's so funny because he never called me by my name. And quite honestly, there aren't many of them that do call me by my name. Out of all the ones that I do know, not many of them call me by my name. They all call me Jay, or they call me Sis, or they call me Mrs. Robinson, because I am their brother's wife, and they want to make certain that everyone knows I am their brother's wife. Or they call me Sis because, I mean, that's just the bond that we all have with brothers and sisters. So he never called me by my name. He always, for the majority of the time, he would call me Mrs. Robinson. And so we had that connection. So I wanted to be there for myself because he was indeed not just a friend but a brother. So I get the call. I listen to the message. I said, okay, I'll get there as soon as I finish this up. And at the burial site, when they get to the burial site, and my mom calls me and tells me she's in the hospital. So September 19th, I'm at my friend's funeral, and my mother and my grandfather in the hospital. And now I got to deal with that. So we finished up with the burial, and I had to grab something to eat because I hadn't eaten all day. My husband hadn't eaten all day. We had to get something to eat, so we did that. And then I changed clothes and went to check on my grandfather. And he was just having a hard time. At this point, he was basically blind. He'd had a series of mini strokes throughout the last 2 years, probably the last, 15 years. He'd had a series of mini strokes, high blood pressure. He was retaining water in his feet. He couldn't walk. He could barely walk. There were a couple of times when the physical therapist was able to get him up to move around, and sometimes he felt confident enough to actually get up and walk, even with the loss of sight. But that wasn't often. So it was just, it was hard. It was hard for him. And then he was trying to also deal with my grandmother, who has Alzheimer's, dementia. And she had been diagnosed probably about 10 years ago as well, with the Alzheimer's. And of course, the longer you live, the worse it gets. The more the disease progresses, and the more you change, and not for the better. So he was dealing with the stress of trying to deal with a wife with dementia that he had to argue with on a daily basis. And arguing was something that they did. It was their language. It was their love language. It's what they did. It's how they communicated with each other. I never understood it. But it made sense to them. And that's just been for as long as I've been on this planet that I've, that's what they've done. I'm sure longer than that, but I know that they did it for at least as long as I've been on this planet. They've done it. So the stress of his own illnesses and then trying to deal with her illnesses in combination with the dementia, it was just a lot. So he was having a hard time breathing, and they got him to the hospital. And I went to see him, and they were going to transfer him to the hospital that his doctor works out of. So they did that. So I told him I would see him after the fact, once he was transferred. I wanted them to get him transferred, and I would be back to see him after that. And forgive the movement, but I have to stretch my legs out. Okay. Gotta stretch my legs out. They've been folded for a while. So, so they got him transferred to the hospital that his doctor works out of, and that while I was waiting for that to happen, while that was going on, it's okay, now let me find out what's going on with my mother. So I go to the hospital where my mother is, and I had to wait almost an hour for them to allow me to see her, because I didn't know what was really going on with her. And because she wouldn't give much information over the phone, but by the time, when I got to the hospital, I figured out what it was. She had gone in for another attempt at cleaning herself up, going into rehab and getting dry, which was not, this was a battle that she's had for so many years. It was a battle that she had. So that's all happening on the 19th. And I got to look at my calendar because these dates are quite important. So that's all happening on the 19th. The burial, and then both my grandfather and my mom going into the hospital. And while this is all going on, I'm working a temp assignment because I have technically been out of work at this point for just about 2 years, coming up on 2 years. So I'm on an assignment, making a decent amount of money and doing some important stuff. And actually liking what I'm doing because I'm learning something new and I'm really liking what I'm doing, and they're quite impressed by what I'm doing, and the speed and accuracy with which I'm doing it. So I'm getting this stuff. I'm working on getting this stuff done. The job has been really good about me taking some of the time that I need to take to uh, see about my friend before he passed away, and then seeing about my grandfather and my mom when they went into the hospital. Thankfully, a lot of the stuff happened over the weekend, but uh, but I still needed to take some time off work, a day here and there. And because I was so tired and because I was running back and forth and trying to handle all these things, uh, it just kind of threw me for a loop starting September 12th, actually starting September 11th, because I ended up taking the day, maybe not even half a day, maybe a couple of hours in that day to go see about our friend. And then he passed on the 12th, and I got back to work on the 14th and expressed that he had passed away and that his services were going to be that coming weekend, so I didn't need to take any time, at least not too much time. Uh, but then, like I said, my grandfather went into the hospital, my mom went into the hospital on the 19th. I get back to work on the 21st, and I'm, still a little in a daze because, all of this is happening. I'm tired. Um, so I work. I'm getting things done, and then the 23rd, my sister-in-law goes into the hospital for a routine outpatient procedure, nothing major. But she gets there on the 23rd, and that's a Wednesday, and she gets through the procedure, but something happens after the procedure where her doctor says, I don't feel comfortable with you going home tonight, so I'm going to keep you overnight. So we're like, okay, fine. That was Wednesday, the 23rd. So we go by, my husband and I go by to see her that day. And because she's in the same hospital with my grandfather, I said, oh, this is the perfect time for me to go see him. So we go visit with her for a little bit, and then I said, okay, we're going to go see my grandfather, and I go see him 23rd. Go see him, go visit with him. He's tired. It's very clear he's tired. It's very clear he's worn out. It's very clear that he's just ready to rest. And so he tells me he wants to talk to my grandmother. So I get the phone, I dial the number. And at this point, she's home by herself, which she really shouldn't be. But at the time, I knew she shouldn't be by herself, but I wasn't clear on the extent of her illness so that I had a full understanding of why she shouldn't be by herself. So I pick up the phone and I call her so he can talk to her, and he's fussing with her because she's doing stuff or saying stuff that agitates him, and she's not understanding what he's saying, and it just gets crazy. So I say, okay, fine. We leave. He finishes talking to her. We go back upstairs to my sister-in-law, and we finish visiting with her, and then we go home, get in bed, get up, go to work the next day, get home from work, check on everybody that we need to check on. My mom at this point decided to check herself out of the hospital. That's the 24th, so she decided to check herself out of the hospital. She's out of the hospital and back at home. This is the 24th. So at some point that night, it was around 10 o'clock that night, my grandfather calls me and says he's going home. And I'm like, you're going home? He said, yeah, I'm going to go home. They're discharging me. I'm going to go home. And I'm thinking, this is about 10 o'clock. I mean, it's kind of odd that they would discharge you this late. He said, well, we're just waiting for the ambulance to get here. Then I'm going to go ahead and go home. I said, okay. And I wasn't thinking spiritually. It didn't register at that moment. I just thought it was really odd that he was being discharged from the hospital at that hour. But they can't hold you against your will. So that's what he wanted to do. That's what he did. And I said, okay, well, just call me when you get there so I know that you made it. and he never called. So I think I called my grandmother and checked, and she said no, he hadn't made it there yet. Um, and again, I just thought it was really strange that he was being discharged at such a late hour. And then when I called her before I went to sleep, she said he hadn't made it there yet. I just thought that was really odd. But I went to sleep anyway because I did have to get up and go to work. So the morning of the 25th, I got up, went to work, and my grandparents had a homemaker. They've had a homemaker for about 2 years, and this was the third homemaker that they had. So I get to work, and before 9 o'clock, I get a call from the homemaker that they were rushing my grandfather back to the hospital. It wasn't looking good. They couldn't get him to respond. He was not responsive. She said his eyes were open and that he was breathing when she got there, but he wasn't responding to anything. So she called the ambulance. Well, she called they had a medical alert thing, so she pressed the button for that. And they had actually called me, but I didn't realize that they were calling me because I was taking care of something else, and I didn't realize they had called me and they had left a message. So I said, okay, fine. Let me know what hospital they take him to, because they're near one hospital, but that hospital that they're near always transfers him to the hospital where his doctor actually works out of. So I just wanted them to take him directly to the hospital that his doctor works out of. So the homemaker was going to call me and let me know where they were taking him. And when she did call me back, she said, well, they're going to take him to the hospital near their house. And I was like, okay, fine. Just let me know when you get there, and I'll see what I can do. I'll try to get out of here. But before I could, the next call I got was that my grandfather had passed. That was the next call that I got. And that he had basically passed on the way to the hospital. He was basically gone when the housekeeper got there. But she wanted to believe that he was still there. But he was basically gone when she got there. So when they got him in the ambulance, it was just a matter of them just getting him to the hospital and pronouncing him, because he was gone already. They just didn't want to pronounce him in the house. They didn't want to pronounce him in the ambulance. They pronounced him when they got to the hospital. So this is the 25th now, September 25th. So our friend passes away September 12th. His services are September 19th. My grandfather and my mom both go into the hospital on the 19th. My sister-in-law goes into the hospital on the 23rd. They decide to keep her until the 24th, and my mom on the 24th checks herself out. But on the 25th, my grandfather, who was still in the hospital, decided he's going to check himself out as well and go home. And the morning of the 25th is when he passed away. So I'm at work, and I have to go tell my supervisor that my grandfather has passed away, and I need to leave. So I do that, and I'm trying to hold everything together, because right now, at that moment, everything, my mind was everywhere. My mind was, I gotta let his kids know. I gotta let my mom know. I gotta let my kids know. I gotta let my husband know. And how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do that? And I am absolutely a Christian. I am unapologetically Christian. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I believe in God our Father, Jesus the Son and my Savior, and the Holy Ghost, who is the Comforter. I believe in the three and the one, the Trinity. I believe in all of that. So I had to dig deep. um, and pull out God and not confusion and fear. And that was initially not easy, even though it should have been. But initially it wasn't easy because, again, my mind went in all of these different directions. And the first thing I had to do was let my supervisor know. That was the first thing I had to do. And then I said, okay, I gotta go. And I called my son, my oldest son, and I said, your papa has passed away. And he was just done. He was done. And he did the crying and the breaking down that I couldn't do at that moment. He did it. And he couldn't, he's saying the same thing over and over again. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. And it was what it was. And his son's mom got on the phone and she's talking to me, and I'm telling her, okay, well, this is where they are. And I'm trying to let everybody know, and I'll meet you guys there. But I hadn't told my grandmother. So, and the housekeeper, when she called me, the homemaker rather, when she called me, she said, well, do you want me to tell your grandmother? And I said, well, I want to be the one to tell her. And so just, could you wait till I get there? But, of course, before I could get there, she had called my aunt, and my aunt told her. And they were at the hospital when I got there. So I told my oldest son, and I had to get off the phone with his son's mother and make it to my other two sons, who thankfully were downtown, but they were in totally opposite directions of where I was. I was in the middle of where the two of them were. My middle son was working, so I had to get to him, and he was south of where I was working. And my youngest son was at school, and I had to get to him, and he was to the north of where I was working. So I got to my middle son, and I let him know. And then I got to my oldest son, and I let him know. And at some point during that time, I called my husband to tell him, and he left work to meet me and get me. But I also had to call my aunt and my uncle, and let him know that his father had passed away. And I had to let all of these people know. And I had to let my mom know. And while I'm trying to let all of these people know at all of these different points, and I'm walking from one place to the other, and making these calls, I'm singing to keep from just melting in the sidewalk in tears. I'm singing. And I don't even know what I'm singing, but whatever it was keeping me together. It was keeping me focused on God. It was keeping me focused on the strength that God has, because I had no strength on my own. I don't know how I was able to, without God, how I would have been able to, without God, make it from where I was to my middle son. And then from there to my youngest son. I don't know how I would have been able to do that had it not been for God's strength, because I had none of my own at that moment. So I was trying to wait on a bus, and then I realized I can't wait on the bus. I've got to I gotta walk here, and I gotta walk there, and I gotta call this person, and I gotta call that person, and I gotta call that person. So I'm doing all of this, and I'm singing my way through, and I get to my youngest son's school, and I let them know that I need to see him. They're trying to figure out where he is, and I'm asking for a private office because I didn't want to tell him out in the open. So we finally get to an office. He finally gets there, and I tell him, and he breaks down. And again, he cries the tears that I can't cry at that moment, because I've got to be strong. And finally my husband gets to us, and he picks us up from my son's school, and we make it to the hospital, and my grandmother was there. Basically everybody's there, and we're waiting on my uncle, my mother's brother, to get there. And we go in, and My aunt, I love her, I do. Uh, I love all my aunts. I love all my uncles. But this aunt is my grandmother's sister, and she is also unapologetically Christian. But she's that Christian that feels that she knows everything, and she's got all the answers, and her way is the best way. And I know that that's how she deals with things, and I'm okay with that. It makes her who she is. But at that moment, I just needed her to be quiet. And she's trying to have a conversation with me, and I'm like, let's just pray, because that's what we need right now. We need prayer right now. Um, so we prayed, and then after we prayed, we go into the room where they have my grandfather, and that's where I broke down, because I don't do well with dead bodies. And it was a running joke from my mom and my grandmother for so many years, because when my great-grandparents passed away, my grandmother's parents, when they passed away, I was able to sit at my great-grandfather's funeral right in the front row, and I was able to see his body in the casket, and it just didn't look right to me. And from that point on, I've not been able to view a body, because I didn't want that image to be the very last image that I had of that person, especially if that person didn't look anything like they did dead as they did alive. I didn't want that to be the last image, so I have not been. And when he passed away, I was in high school. I think either a sophomore or junior in high school when he passed away, and then shortly thereafter, within 6 months' time frame, my great-grandmother, his wife, passed away, and I couldn't view her body either. I have no idea what her body looked like in the casket, because I just couldn't do it. And from that point, I had not been able to view a dead body up until my mother's biological father passed away. My grandfather was my mother's stepfather, but he was the man that was there. He was the man that raised her. He was the man that raised me. But when my mother's biological father passed away, I was able to see him deceased in his hospital bed. And it didn't bother me. And I tell people it didn't. I know it didn't bother me because I had no true emotional connection to him. He was my grandfather, yes, and I loved him, yes, and I knew he and the family, yes, but I didn't have that bond with him as I had with my grandfather. I didn't have it. It wasn't there. So I was able to see him in the casket, or not even in the casket. I was able to see him in the bed shortly after he passed away. And then I had not been able to view a body from that point up until our friend passed away on the 12th. And I just thought it was so amazing that I was able to view him. But God was preparing me. That's all I can say about that. God was preparing me. Because my biological grandfather passed away, I don't know, 5, 7, I've got his obituary somewhere in my mom's thing, but he passed away several years ago. And from seeing his body up until our friend passed away, I had not been able to view a body again, because again, it was the whole, I believe, emotional connection thing. I didn't want that to be the last image of that person that I had. So, but when our friend passed away on the 12th, of course you get to go view the body before the actual services, and I was actually able to go into that room and view his body, and he didn't look like himself. But the beautiful thing is that even though I can still see him in that casket, it's not the last image I have of him. And that's amazing to me. And I didn't realize why I had been able to view him. I didn't see it. I couldn't. It didn't click didn't register at that point why I had been able to view him and not get overly upset. But again, it was God preparing me because I had to do it for my grandfather. I had to do it for my grandfather. I had to go in and make certain that he was ready, and I took my grandmother to make certain that, you know, she got to see him before the actual services. And I was able to view him in the casket and make sure that his suit was right, his tie was right, and all of that. And at this point, of course, my mom was with us, being my mom. You tired, puppy? Yeah. So we get to the hospital, and I'm able to view my grandfather's body in the bed, and but that's when I broke down. That's when everything I had in me I was able to release. But again, it was one of those moments when my aunt was trying to talk to me, and I couldn't understand, why are you talking to me? It just didn't click to me that she was trying to make sense of it the best way that she knew how, and she was trying to encourage me. It just didn't make sense to me at that moment that that's what she was trying to do. All I could say, all I could think was, why are you talking to me? And my husband's trying to hold me up. And he's like, just let her sit down. Just let her sit down. Just let her sit down. And I was able to sit down and get it out. And my oldest son was able to get it out. And my youngest son, he was able to get it out. But of course, at one point, he started hyperventilating and having a panic attack. So I had to get myself together so that I could walk him through getting through that. And then eventually my uncle made it there, and he wanted some alone time with my grandfather, so we let him have his alone time. But I still had to be concerned with my grandmother. So we got her, they got her back home, and I still had to deal with the hospital and make sure that they knew where to take my grandfather's body and who was going to come and get him, and call the funeral home and have them do what they needed to do and all of that. So this was the 25th. And sorry, my husband's texting me. So this was the 25th, and I still needed to communicate with my grandfather's children. And still had to get to work. So the 25th was that Friday. The 26th and 27th, I don't think I went back to work on the 28th. I think I took that time because I needed that time. So I get back to work on the 29th, and I'm dealing with all of that at work. And I'm in a fog, like all of the stuff that I had made progress on, that progress, that momentum I had stopped. It stopped. And it was getting harder for me to understand simple things, and it was getting harder for me to get things accomplished. It was getting harder for me to meet deadlines, and that was concerning the people that I reported to, which it should have, but I expected compassion at the same time, and I got compassion from my direct supervisor, because the gentleman that hired me basically left the company right after he hired me. But he left the company so that he could go with his wife to be with her father, her parents, over in England, because her father was gravely ill and she wanted to spend as much time with her father as she could. So I understood that. So the man that hired me left the company, but he was still a consultant for the company, but didn't have anything else to do with my position at that point. So my direct supervisor was quite compassionate. She was a great girl, quite compassionate. So she understood what I was going through, and tried to be as sympathetic as possible. But the person that she reported to was, although compassionate, was not as sympathetic. So I'm trying to get all of these things done. I'm trying to get some things accomplished, and I'm hitting a brick wall, and things aren't moving the way they should at work, and things are falling apart. I can't even say falling apart, because they weren't falling apart really. They were more going the way that they should have gone with the passing of my grandfather. So I get everything set for my grandfather's services, and there were some things I needed help with, like because he was a veteran, I wanted to make sure that he got his just honors as a veteran, but I didn't know what the process was, and I still have paperwork I got to fill out so that my grandmother is reimbursed for some things, and so that I can get his headstone. Oh my God, I need to do that. 5 months in, and I still haven't done that. But I didn't know all the steps to get these things done, and thankfully his son knew what to do, so he helped me with that part. So the services were October 3rd, and his two remaining sons, and his daughter flew in, and his daughter-in-law flew in for the services and then left right after. They didn't go to the burial because, ironically, his son, I believe he's the oldest remaining son now, he runs a funeral home. So as much as he wanted to be able to grieve his father, he still had to get back to his job, which was running a funeral home. And he was a pastor. So he's a preacher, and he's running a funeral home, and his father's passed away, and he doesn't even have the opportunity to grieve the way that he should be able to grieve for his father. And granted that they didn't necessarily have, I don't want to say they had a bad relationship, because they didn't have a bad relationship. They had a good relationship. It's just that his children, my grandfather's children, spent their formative years in the South, because my grandfather didn't know how to raise them after their mother passed away. So he sent them to their mother's people so her people could raise them. And he would come to the South from the North to visit with them, and from time to time he would send for them, and they would come north and spend that time with their dad and my grandmother. So they had a relationship. At one point, one of his sons actually lived here for a little bit, and they sent him back south. And I think maybe within 2 years of him going back south, he passed away. So anyway, so they come up for the services, and had to fly back that same day. So they fly back south. The services were the 3rd, which is a Saturday. I don't think I went back to work on that 5th, which was that Monday. But I did go back that Tuesday, and I made it clear that there were going to be some things that I needed to do for my grandmother as far as getting her settled and helping her get some things done. So they said they understood it. My direct supervisor said she understood it. But because all of this was happening so fast, back to back. Sorry, puppy, lay down. Sorry. All of this stuff was happening so fast, back to back. I gotta go check on the puppy. He got his paw stuck. Oh, I've disturbed the puppy. Woke him up. Now he wants to be my friend. No, stop. So anyway, as I was saying, you want to lay on my shoes? He's gonna lay on my shoes so I don't go anywhere without him. So anyway, all of this stuff was happening back to back, and the work product was not the best because I just was in a cloud, and every time I thought I was getting my mind back, something else would happen. So I'm at work that week, and I explained to my supervisor that there were going to be some things that I need to do for my grandmother, and I gave her the date of one of those things. I had to take my grandmother to Social Security so that she could file for her widow's benefits and that we could inform Social Security that my grandfather had passed. So I did that on the 19th, and I got back to work on the 20th. And there was a big project that I was working on, and because this company was moving, we had to notify the vendors, and there were a lot of them. We had to notify those vendors about the move, and it required a mail merge project. And I've done mail merges over my 20-plus year span of being an administrative support person, so I knew how to do it. And I knew how to pull information from one database and put it into an Excel spreadsheet so that information meshed well and then merged into the letter. But for some reason, I was having a very difficult time. And I shouldn't even say for some reason. I know why I was having a difficult time. So, and I was covering for a young lady who was about to go on maternity leave. But it just so happened that she was able to get this thing done within a day. Something that was taking me 2 weeks to get done. It took her literally a day to get it done, and it just blew my mind that she had been able to do that. So I take my grandmother to Social Security on the 19th. I come back to work on the 20th, and they explain all of this to me. This young lady was able to get this stuff done within a day's time. Everything that I've been struggling with over 2 weeks span, she was able to get done in a day. And I said, okay, fine. I understand. And that was when they decided to end my assignment. And I said, that's fine. I understand. You need someone who can focus on this. And right now that someone isn't me. So I appreciate the opportunity. I thank you very much. And that was the 20th. Now, ironically, October 21st of 2013 was the day that I was laid off from my job as an executive assistant for a major concrete company. So I was laid off 2 years from that permanent position. I shouldn't even say permanent position, salary position. 2 years before this company decided to end my contract early because I couldn't focus on what they needed. And I understood that. Like I said, when I first started with them in August, everything was great. I was getting this stuff done. Everything was moving fast. They couldn't keep up with me. But then September hit, September 11th, which was ironically my middle son's birthday, his 21st birthday at that. September 11th came. We go to the hospital for my friend. He passed on the 12th. And then downhill from there. But I totally understood why. I totally understood. And I understood why God allowed it to happen, because He'd been telling me for the longest that there were some things I needed to do. He wouldn't let me find a salary position because I needed to take care of my grandparents, and I needed to get this book done. And thankfully, I was able to get the book done. I just needed the means to get it published, and I still don't have the means to get it published. But I'm okay with that because I was able to talk with another publisher who's willing to work with me at a better rate than the previous publisher or was. So I'll be able to eventually get it done. But God had been talking to me about what I needed to do, what I needed to focus on, and I had been making excuses for not focusing on it. And my biggest excuse was work. So when he took the job, I made other excuses. Um, I still took care of my family. I still took care of my grandparents and did what they needed me to do. But he wanted me to give them more attention, and I was making excuses of why I couldn't. And looking for work was one of those excuses. And it's so funny because my grandfather wanted me to be their homemaker because he figured, okay, well, your family, one, and we trust you too, but three, you could use the income. So why not be our homemaker? And I told him no, because I don't think I'll be able to make enough money to sustain the household, even though my husband's working. My husband's working, and whatever I made with my grandparents would have been fine. But I kept saying no. And when my grandfather passed away in September, it was determined that my grandmother cannot live by herself. So, and it's ironic because we had just moved in June into a house that we were renting, and we had signed a year lease. So when my grandfather passed in September, and it was determined that my grandmother could not live by herself, because shortly after my grandfather passed, I took her to her doctor's appointment, and the doctor said, where is she going to live, because she can't live by herself. Her dementia is too far advanced. She can't be alone. And I said, well, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to her about, because she had been wandering and disoriented. And my mom had been staying with her. My mom had stayed with her off and on for a while. My sons had been staying off and on with her for a while. And it was all because we knew that eventually she would come and live with us, and we didn't want her by herself. So my youngest son stayed with her the longest because my mom had gotten to a point where she could not be with her for an extended amount of time. I think the longest that she spent there was maybe 10 days total straight, and she got to a point where she just couldn't do it because of her health, and she had been going in and out of the hospital and trying to figure out what was going on with her. And there were so many things going on with her that it was insane. And some of the things I knew and some I didn't. She called me one day crying because she had been diagnosed with hepatitis C, and she didn't really want to know. But she was concerned, and she knew she had to tell somebody. And I didn't know what hepatitis C was, and I told her I would look it up and find out, and I did. And I explained to her what she needed to do, and that she needed to be proactive about it. Her digestive system began to fail. She was in and out of the hospital. She had diarrhea like crazy. They got into a point where she hated going to the bathroom because it hurt. She was throwing up. All of this stuff was going on. My mother was also a heavy drinker. So she's a heavy drinker with these other illnesses. And if she was being truthful, one of them was already cancer, which she had told me about 20 years before. And on top of that, now she has hepatitis C, which only exacerbates, if not treated, cancer. Then she may have also quite honestly had cirrhosis of the liver, even though she said she would go and get her scans done. They would tell her that her kidneys and her liver were good. I honestly don't believe that, because she was an extremely heavy drinker and had been for years. So we're going through this process of trying to find somewhere to move, so that my grandmother could live with us, because she couldn't live in the house that we were rented because it just wasn't safe enough. I wanted to have this great birthday party for my 46th birthday and just couldn't do it. Financially, emotionally, I just couldn't do it. So we didn't do much of anything. I just couldn't do it. And we get through Thanksgiving and still trying to find somewhere to go. One of my husband's family members, who rehabs houses and apartment buildings. You know, we're at a function for for my husband's family, and just the cousins getting together. And one of his cousins says, "Well, yeah, I didn't even think about it, but you know, I've got this house that I'm rehabbing in, you know, Bellwood. And if you guys want to take a look at it, you can take a look at it. And if you want to rent it, and you know, once it's ready, you can rent it." We said, "Great," because we've been having a hard time trying to find something. A really hard time. It was just amazing how hard of a time we were having trying to find something. I'm just in disbelief with how difficult it is to find a place to live, reasonably priced, in a decent area. So when he said that, I was like, okay, well, let's go take a look at it. We have to make sure that it's safe. And we did take a look at it, and it was almost exactly like where we were living at that moment. But it was a little bit smaller, and the stairs weren't as steep, so that made it a little bit safer. So we said, okay, we'll take it. We just need, you know, how much and when will it be ready, because we've got to give our current landlord, who's already aware that we're going to be moving, we have to give her a move-out date. So he's, you know, because he's dealing with the village versus the city, he has to get some approvals and get some inspections and blah, blah, blah. So we're waiting. And we tell our current landlord, okay, we found something and we should be able to move by December 31st. But at the very latest, January 30th, we should be able to move. So we were initially looking at the end of November, but we knew that they had to get this inspection done, and we knew all that stuff had to be done. So we gave her the possibility of November, but we weren't solid on it. We told her, you know, December 31st or January 31st is what we said. And December 31st comes, and we're not moving. We don't have a date. The family member, the cousin, is still going back and forth with getting this place done on time and getting it done right and having an inspection done. And he's not really communicating with us, and we're both reaching out to him. You know, we need to know when can we move. We need to know is the place ready. We need to know when to be ready, because we've already given this woman some dates, and we need to be able to stick with it. My grandmother has to move in with us. She can't keep living the way she's living. My son can't keep staying there with her the way he's staying with her. You know, he has to be able to get up and go to school and get a good night's rest. And here he is, you know, 17, trying to care for this 82-year-old woman with dementia who is quite feisty, to put it nicely. And, you know, every once in a while he'd reach back and say, okay, well, I'm here at this point, and, you know, the inspector's saying this, and the guy that I had to go, and now the guy I have now was taking his time, and the inspector came out, and, you know, and we're like, okay, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. We have to get this done. And my cousin says, well, the person that we're renting from is also a cousin. She's my cousin. And she says, I'll be there in December to look at the house and make sure that everything is okay. No problem. No problem with that. We'd already started the packing process, and we knew, because we knew we were moving. We'd already started the packing process. And it's now December. It's right before Christmas, December 23rd. And I'm picking up my husband from work. I had just pulled into the parking lot, and I get a phone call from my brother, and he says, Mama's dead. What? Mama's dead. What do you mean she's dead? Well, the police just called me and said she's dead. And I'm like, well, why did they call? And then I thought, well, okay, his name begins with C. He's the first person in the phone. His middle name actually begins with A, so yeah, they found him first instead of finding me, because mine begins with J. And we never call him by his first name, we always call him by his middle name. So His number is the first one that pulls up in her cell phone that lists as a family member. This is December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. And he's calling me, telling me my mom has passed away. And he gives me the officer's number that called him, and I called the officer back, and my husband is out by this time. And he gets in the car, and he looks at me and he says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "My brother just called me and told me my mama did." What? We're both just blown. Our minds are blown because what do you mean she's dead? So he's like, "Wait, let me drive. I'll drive. And my husband's a smoker. And the one rule I have is do not smoke in the car. I'm not a smoker. Don't smoke in the car. I don't want to smell the cigarette smoke. Don't smoke in the house. I don't want to smell the cigarette smoke." But at that moment, I didn't care. Let the window down, smoke a cigarette. I don't care. So he's driving, and my husband works in the western suburb. And at the time, of course, we're living in the city. My mom's living in the city. And the commute from the western suburb back to the city can be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half in rush hour traffic. So this is Wednesday, December 23rd, and we're trying to get back into the city from the western suburb, an hour and a half away. And I called the police officer that called my brother, and I said, "Look, this is, and I need to be certain that what I was just told is correct." And he said, "Yes, I'm sorry to inform you, but your mother has passed away." And I'm like, "Okay, let me just be 100% sure. You're talking about," and I give her whole name, and he says, "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, but she's passed away." I said, "Okay, it's not that I doubt you, but quite honestly, I can't believe you until I actually get there and see her. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're more than an hour away from the city, so please don't release her body to anyone until I get there, because I got to see if this is really my mother." And he says, "I understand. It's not a problem. Do you think that maybe your brother could get here before you?" I said, "No, my brother's in a whole other state. You were only able to get to his telephone number first because he's first in the phone, alphabetically. I'm an hour away. I'll get there. Don't release her body." So we eventually get there. By this time, my husband has smoked, 4 cigarettes. And I call my son, and my oldest son, and I tell him, and he's like, everybody is just mind blown by this, that no one is able to register that this lady has passed away. And I said, "Well, I don't believe it. I've got to get there. I'll let you know when I get there." So I get there, and the police officers are there, and sure enough, they describe how they found her, how she was found, and I get in her apartment, and she's laid out in the bed, dead. And I'm like, okay, it's real. It's true. So because of how she was laid out, I had to get her blanket off the floor and cover her up. Okay, and I've got to pause so I can plug this thing in because it just told me that the battery is low. Well, how about I leave it at this? We get there, it's her. I had to cover her up because she was basically naked from the waist up. All she had on was her Depends, because that's what she was wearing at that point. And I'll continue later. I'll stop here. So this wonderful little tablet can charge up, and I can take a breather, get some water in my system. I'm feeling dehydrated. And go from there.